Welcome to the Doctor's Corner with Dr. Kline and Janelle Elgaway.
Good evening and welcome to the Doctor's Corner on Call 360 Network with co-host Dr. Kline and I'm Janelle Elgaway. Tonight's special guest is Charles Mattocks discussing type 2 diabetes, treatments, and costs. There are two ways to listen into tonight's program through our website, www.cawnation.com, or YouTube channel, The Doctor's Corner. Please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get reminders of when we are on live. Also, Dr. Kline loves to hear from you and answer all your questions from our mailbag. If you have future mailbag questions, please email them to Janelle, Jonelle.Elgaway, which is ELGAWAY, at CAW360.com. If anyone would like to call in with questions this evening, you can do so at 415-403-2715. And now I'd like to welcome Dr. Kline and Charles Mattocks to the Doctor's Corner. How is everyone this evening?
Good evening. I'm just dandy. Mm-hmm. And Charles, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing fantastic. I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me, everyone.
We're happy to have you. Before we get into everything, Dr. Kline, is there anything newsworthy that has occurred in the last week that you'd like to share with us?
We talked last week about the problem of the opioid refugee crisis, which we estimate to be between 5 and 7 million people. This is the biggest catastrophe we've ever had in the United States because it's purposefully forcing people off medicines that were working fine, and everybody still has their head in the sand, and it's getting worse. Last week we mentioned more doctor-patient relationship laws trying to be passed in state legislators outlawing the use of fentanyl, forcing doctors to pay for the hospitalizations if they accidentally addict somebody. And apparently in North Carolina, they're trying to pass a bill that will eliminate my ability to treat pain patients, and they will be forced to go see pain management clinics, which we already have data on to show that a third of them don't even use pain medicines. Another third force you to get injections, dangerous steroid injections, before they give you pain medicine, and a third that do the right thing. That's only 30%. There's not enough pain doctors around, so the legislature is just flapping in the breeze, desperately frightened to make sure that they are satisfying the public. They're protecting people from dope fiends and from doctors who give out prescriptions that cause dope fiends. This is called substance exposure. This is the word that's being used lately. In other words, if you're exposed to opiates, then you will become a dope fiend. You will become addicted. And I just submitted a paper to the Health and Human Services task force that's going on. There actually is no evidence for that. It turns out that that's true for other addictions like alcohol and cocaine and amphetamines, but it's not true for opiate addiction, heroin addiction. Heroin addiction is hardcore wired, it's genetic, and it occurs with the very first pill. I was interviewing an addict the other day from South Carolina, and I said, "Were you addicted on the first pill?" And he said, "No." So that kind of shot down my theory. And I said, "Well, what happened?" He says, "Well, I'll tell you something. It energized me." So it took him a little while, and then it got worse and worse. So my first pill may not be exactly right, but first pills, plural, might be more accurate. He ended up on the streets shooting heroin for 5 years. So that's not a normal response to an opiate, to feel energized. When opiates are narcotics, narcos means to sleep. Most people, when they take a narcotic or an opiate painkiller, feel relaxed and sleepy, not energized. So when people report that they're being energized, then they need to know they may have this disease. So this legislature is going to try, I guess, taking all of my patients away from me and forcing them into clinics. This is really, really a terrible transgression on the doctor-patient relationship. This train is falling off the tracks. And so when we have more details, maybe next week, we're going to need specific call-ins to state legislators if this moves along in the process. A lot of these things do die, but can you imagine that? Can you imagine a government forcing a doctor to send his patients to consultants?
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to do if somebody has a sore throat? Force them to go see ENT surgeons? How about a little lung infection? Oh, got to go to a pulmonology specialist. You know, your heart's racing a little fast. Oh, no, you can't take care of that. Here, sign this form. You have to go see a cardiologist. So we will keep you abreast of that. And I think, Janelle, you had a little news about someone you know who appeared on NBC tonight.
Yeah, that's right. Her name is Maria. Give me a second here. I don't know if I have her last name. I want to say it correctly. Okay, I don't have it on me. Anyway, Maria, yeah, she's from the chronic pain community, and I think she did a wonderful job. I'm sorry, Higginbotham. NBC Nightly News covered it, and she talked about her, life. She's had 13 neck surgeries or back surgeries, and basically, she just has a hard time just getting to her back door, basically. So I think she did a wonderful job sharing, who the face is of the chronic pain patient, because this is what it is. And you're right. I mean, the more they take these medications and treatments and everything from us, we're not going to be able to take care of ourselves here eventually. And what's going to happen then?
Well, Janelle, that reminds me, we need to also start beating the drum that, quit your job. According to a survey, 60% of people who were cut off had to quit their jobs. And what do you do when you quit your job? You go get on Social Security disability. Mm-hmm. So, this is liable to become a very expensive proposition. People losing their health care coverage because they're not working need to go on Medicaid, more costs. This will kind of start perking up their ears. But anyway, we will keep you posted because this is a serious intrusion into the doctor-patient relationship. Do you know who started the doctor-patient relationship?
I don't. Who was it?
It was Hippocrates. Now, he's famous for coming up with a list of ethical things to go by, and no other profession ever done that. But he also pioneered bedside medicine.
Interesting.
He went to see the patient. I don't know how they were doing it before, but he would go to people's homes, and actually his oath that he wrote, or ethics, only had two things in it. One is confidentiality, and the other, since you're in somebody's home and in close contact, not to take advantage of the patients and their families. So there were really only two things. But he started bedside medicine. That was 500 BC. So that's 250 years of us actually sitting next to a patient. And that's being torn asunder.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we have a very interesting guest tonight. And Janelle, do you want to introduce our guest, Charles Mattocks?
Mattocks, yes. Charles Mattocks, welcome to the Doctor's Corner. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you. Can you just tell us a little bit?
Can you guys hear me good?
Yep.
Yeah, you're a little bit far away, but I think you're good. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do, and a little bit about your life with diabetes?
What I do,
Mm-hmm. You do a lot.
I think I'm redefining that.
Okay.
I think I'm redefining that, to be honest with you, because even hearing the doctor talk right now and trying to, carry the title of a health advocate or a diabetes advocate, you really have to kind of see if I'm really going down the right road, or if I'm actually an advocate that's making any real difference. And but I am a type 2 diabetic who, in all senses of the word, have reversed my diabetes. So I don't take any medication, and I control it with just exercise and diet and overall lifestyle. But, I'm very much also into advocating for other conditions as well. So, I'm an award-winning filmmaker with a beautiful documentary that you've seen based on a rare disease called complex regional pain syndrome. And we have a beautiful television show on Discovery Networks, the first ever diabetes docu-reality series. It takes 5 people living with diabetes and tries to change their lives, basically in a positive way. So yeah, that's really, my thing is trying to advocate for the people, kind of fighting the system, bucking the system, trying to create change, trying to bring to light some of the issues that go on within the healthcare system and with people living with some of these chronic and rare diseases.
Charles, it's one of my tenets is with chronic pain is this is a journey with both doctors and patients. Neither can do it alone, and that's what you're doing. You're doing the patient part of diabetes, and then we doctors do the doctor part. And I think it's a very good partnership, because it's the only people that really know what's going on are the people with the disorder. And, we can kind of sit and say, oh, what's it like to have such and such? And we can be empathetic, which is nice, but we don't really know. So whenever I have questions about oddball diseases, I always try to find the associations being groups of patients usually, and look for information. There are wonderful websites. American Diabetic Association has tons of information on it, and websites for other diseases do too. So I think your role was very important, and hopefully you can keep it up.
You mentioned something earlier a few seconds ago, and I wanted to kind of ask you, with all that is changing, who wins? Is it a pharmaceutical company that wins? Because if the doctors have to go through all the hurdles that you mentioned, then who wins in this situation?
Yeah, you're right. That's a long string of losers. And, for example, the CDC is attempting to demonize 5,000 years of pain medicines. And that was really the bad point of their CDC guidelines. They did not talk about when you use these wonderful drugs that God gave us in a plant. It's one of the safest medicines we use, except for the addiction that occurs. And that's pretty much like a lot of serious side effects of medicines that occur rarely. But that's the name of the game for us doctors, But then we look at the safety profile of the drug itself. Is the drug itself safe? For example, Tylenol is a safe drug, but very few people know that it has a black box warning on it that you can develop this horrible skin condition called Steven Johnson and end up in the hospital. But yet we don't stop using Tylenol. Same thing with diabetes. There's lots of medicines now in the diabetic universe that have some pretty serious side effects, and I noticed that many of them are being poo-pooed or taken away. And believe it or not, I do not keep up with all that. So what do? I go to associations, American Diabetic Association or whatever, to find out the information. So it's you guys that keep us informed with things. It's too hard for us to keep up with all the details. So I've noticed that you've worked with the American Diabetic Association, and I think that's really cool.
Well, yeah, they're actually, well, I think what is cool, to be honest with you, is that they're making change. I had actually a great conversation with the CEO the other day. It's a new black female, and I kind of let her know some of my thoughts as far as what I thought they could improve, and to be honest, why I didn't work with them anymore, right?
Oh, okay.
Because I thought that they were all about the money, and
whenever
I did events with the whenever I did, but hear me out. Whenever I did events with the ADA, it was all about the Benjamins and all about. There were barely any people there who actually had diabetes, but big sponsors. And I said, I've even seen McDonald's as a sponsor. And you know what she said, Charles? I am fully aware of that. And she said, that's why we are talking to people like you and we're making changes. She said that we are, what's that new that new it word where they're shaking up the system. Man, I can't remember the word, but she is very much aware of that. She said she heard all of this doing her tour around the country and to different places, and they are going to be making some serious changes and shaking up the system.
Ah, excellent.
So that was the news, right? Because a lot of these nonprofits really just fall in line with pharmaceutical companies, and it does no good for or little to no good for the people, because they're catering to the hundreds of millions of dollars that they're able to get. The ADA was able to receive, I forget, it was about 2-3 years ago, over $100 and something million in donations. So that's big business. That's nonprofit is for profit, and so that's got to change. And the fact that they see the need and see the necessity to make changes is powerful, and maybe now we can get some things done.
Tell us about your Discover, what is it, channel? I don't know
Discovery
nothing
ID.
about it. Film?
Discovery.
Okay, yeah. Fill us in. What's that?
Yeah. Well, basically, what I did is trying to find ways to reach people who are living with diabetes, because a lot of times, even though social media has taken over so-called marketing, a lot of the people that have diabetes and a lot of even other rare conditions aren't found on the internet, social media. I had a lady, Janelle, yesterday send me an email on Facebook, a note on Facebook saying she wishes she could see Trial by Fire. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow, where have you been? Film has been on YouTube for probably about 5 months now. Yeah. And I have had probably about 4 of those that people are like, I wish we could see the film. How can we see the film? So a lot of people really are not on social media, and a lot of people dealing with these chronic conditions are older people, whether it's even diabetes, and they're not the millennials that are dealing so-called with type 2 diabetes, and they don't get online, and if they get online, it's not for long lengths of period. They may go check some email, maybe occasionally post something on Facebook, but they're not running around Twitter and Instagram. So being able to reach the people right in their own homes is key. Right as they sit down, as they're eating dinner, as they're sitting with the family. So we created this platform to be able to educate, entertain. I would say probably a majority of the show is focused on the mental aspects of the condition and dealing with whether it's family, dealing with personal. A lot of people who are dealing with these conditions have depression and psychological issues that they have to overcome. Some people are dealing with financial issues on top of the condition, on top of the depression, and then personal issues too as well. So what we do is we actually bring in a few psychologists and therapists to kind of work with them. When it comes to diet, we all kind of know what we should and shouldn't be eating, so we just kind of reaffirm that. Work with them to get active and to really take their lives in their own hands. A lot of people, especially with type 2 diabetes, don't even know what it is. So you walk in and you get medication and you walk out, and that's pretty much it. And it's very interesting, and I'm sure Doc, you could understand this too as well. I would say, not long ago, a couple of months back, I got something, a little strep throat from my daughter, and I went to get some antibiotics. And I thought to myself, wow, they gave me antibiotics, but it would have been great to have a suggestion of maybe getting some probiotics. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, why wouldn't they say, knowing that, that the penicillin is going to kill both good and bad bacteria, and that there's issues and conditions that can come from just that, serious complications from that. Why would
Well, that's
you
a good
suggest,
point to
hey,
put
you
in
know
a
what?
plug. Good point to put in a plug for independent pharmacists, because when you work for a big corporation, they tell you that they have a goal for you, and the goal is to fill 500 prescriptions a day, or whatever. So even great
Okay.
pharmacists don't have the time to, present the medicines themselves to you, but in little small independent pharmacies, which, by the way, are actually cheaper if you ever have to buy your
Yeah.
own medicines, which is happening more and more as the insurance companies get out of the business of supplying both diabetic supplies at a reasonable price and pain medicines, So people are then forced to spend money. And if you have a nice pharmacist, he'll say, look, why don't I ask your doctor if we could switch over to this? And, here you should be taking probiotics whenever you take an antibiotic. So,
Of
I'm a big
course.
fan of sending people to independent pharmacists. I think you have a good point. So,
Yeah, yeah. So we've got a situation, and I think that right now we're also working on doing a season for sickle cell. We've got some great names attached. We're taking the same premise as Reverse, and we're going to find 5 people living with sickle cell in different conditions and different stages. Different stages, and we're going to bring in some great experts. I've got Cousin Junior, who is one of the stars on the Steve Harvey morning show, and we know that Steve Harvey reaches millions of people every morning, and obviously with Cousin Junior being attached to the show, we intend to be able to get some tremendous exposure. I've got Dr. Greg Lunsford from Married to Medicine attached to the show. We've got Dr. Jeff Gargier, who's also a well-known therapist and psychologist who's on all the major talk shows on a regular basis and all the reality shows. And then we got some other surprises too as well. So we're really excited. I've just reached out to many people in the sickle cell community who are very, very excited, and some of the groups have really taken up the charge of working together with me to help get this in front of the right people, and I'm hoping that we can secure up some things in the next few weeks and be on set in Jamaica, because we shoot in Jamaica, and hopefully get this thing out to the people and change some lives.
now where would you broadcast this after it's done?
Back on Discovery.
Okay, so
Back
that's
on
the central
Discovery,
place for
yeah.
everything. Well, as a pain physician and having been a pediatrician at some point, there's a couple things that are really painful. One of them is kidney stones, which they're just treating with Tylenol now in the emergency room. We were always taught to give intravenous morphine. I mean, that's how bad it is. And the other is sickle cell crisis, when kids and young adults especially shut down their oxygen delivery. There's nothing more painful than what we call hypoxemia, which means oxygen not getting into the tissues. So this happens during heart attacks, when people have horrible chest pain. It happens when people clot an artery, like in their leg. It's extremely painful. And the pain in sickle cell crisis is over your entire body because you have low oxygen delivery over your entire body. There is nothing in this world more painful than a sickle cell crisis. And I've been reading that they are getting less and less pain medicines. Being black on top of it doesn't help. Then they get some points for that. And then pretty soon, they just don't treat at all. I mean,
Yeah.
this is negligent malpractice. In the state of North Carolina, the board makes it very clear that if you are under-treating people, then you just may end up in front of the board. So in the practice of medicine, it is still negligent to undertreat or refuse to treat people with any disease, much less people in pain. And I've been hearing lots and lots of negative things about the number of kids and young adults being treated during their crisis. And so I am available if you want to get my 2 cents into your little film there, and plus I'm very inexpensive, and so
that sounds even better.
This is really a huge problem. So
yeah,
there's my 2 cents.
I want to give a couple of shout outs, right? Because we're hoping to bring on some good companies and in the sickle cell space, and hoping that they are listening and realize that this is going to be a major program and that this is something that they should really get behind. And I'm determined. This is one thing where I'm going to make sure I make this happen. I'm going to make sure that this is a major success. So, whoever is involved in sickle cell should truly be working with us. No excuses, because the people need this, and there's no excuse why we shouldn't be doing a program like this to expose, educate, inspire people living with sickle cell. We need to expose sickle cell and let people understand what it is, how it works, and how we can help support those with sickle cell. So hopefully I'm looking at companies like GBT and Novartis to come on board, and Manis to come on board, and hopefully we could work together and change some lives and save some lives.
Yeah, actually,
go ahead.
Dr. Kline and I what was it, April, I believe, or May, we went to D.C. and we went with Nita Thompson. She's from World Council Sickle Cell, I believe, or I'm not sure the correct name. And Doc Myers, I know they're advocates. He passed away, sadly, this past year. But do you know Nita? Anyway, when we were in D.C., we spoke in front of a congressional briefing, and that was one of the things that was brought up about sickle cell because of how quickly people just go downhill when they get sick. I mean, they need to be hydrated, and they need to get their medications immediately.
Well, and there's something else, too. There's a lot of white doctors out there, and you see some little black kid coming in, and it's this disbelief about people being in pain. And I think that's an additional factor. Martin Luther King said that, that prejudice comes from separation. And so by bringing this out, where everybody can see it, I think that's real important. I'm trying to think of the last time I saw a show, about sickle cell, and I just don't recall any. It's one of those things that needs to be made public, pretty much like our pain refugee crisis too. But especially, it's just so awful to see these kids suffering and doctors standing around thinking they're faking,
or even the diabetic community, because they can't get their insulin and stuff. There's so many different communities that are having issues.
What about the cost of diabetic supplies, Charles? Is that an issue with you guys? Are you looking into that?
Well, obviously, the cost of insulin is a major issue. I think that is, hopefully being addressed now. We know that there's some. I think it's Lilly is coming out with a cheaper form of insulin, which is still ridiculous when you think about it. When you can go to Canada and get a vial of insulin, I think it's about $10, and it's hundreds of dollars here. So I guess instead of making, $500, $400, $300 a bottle, they only make $150 profit off a bottle. So it's I know that's the issue, one of the issues, and of course, even to be honest with you, getting some of these supplies. Fortunately, I've got a good buddy, Jeff, who owns One Drop, and he sends me some awesome stuff, awesome meters. But to be honest, if he didn't send me those meters, I would, it's a rough go by, having to stay on top of meters and strips and things like that. It's not an easy thing.
Yeah, it's I like these little wheeled walkers, with the seat on them, the brakes. You've seen those, and I kind of recommend them for a lot of patients. It's just amazing how it eases your back if you've got a terrible back problem. And I used to get them for about $120, and I would buy them for people, and they could pay part depending on their income levels. So it's been a while, so I ordered a couple the other day, $57 for the same walker. Point being, manufacturers can lower their price if they get a large volume. It's called, volume pricing or unit pricing. So in this case, the unit price dropped in half. The drug companies are healthcare profiteers. So what happens when they get more orders for the insulin, they say, oh, the demand is higher. And then they raise the price. Yeah. And I have no solution to this. One of the problems is it's in the law that you cannot negotiate for drugs for the Medicare system. Well, there's part of the problem. If you can't, negotiate for prices like they do in Canada, that's why the prices are lower in Canada, because they sit down and they negotiate their prices. So I know there's a move afoot to work on this problem of getting the price of insulin down. Interestingly, the old fork insulin was actually pretty good. It didn't really have as many problems as people thought. It was like $10 a month, and then they started manufacturing these human types, which, a lot more expensive. And then they did a dirty trick. Then they took the human insulins, like Humalog, and they changed a couple of amino acid chains around so that it still worked the same, but they could sell it as something different. These are the analogs. They're exactly the same as the others. So I don't know. It's good to have activism, and certainly the people who are buying the insulin are the best people to be the activists. So hopefully you can launch into that too, and here I'm telling you what to do. Typical doctor.
I do want to say hi to a few people in sickle cell, because I'm sure I'm going to share this with them, and I want them to hear their names, because there's some great advocates that I'm working with who are really coming on board, and without the advocates, we get nowhere. So I'm sure I'm saying her name totally wrong, but it's Mapilar, and she has a beautiful nonprofit. She works with MTS Sickle Cell Foundation. Let me think. I'm sure I'm chopping up a bunch of names over here. And also Indari. Indari is actually a new drug for sickle cell, and I'm hoping to work with those guys because, like I said, we are going to town, and I know that once this show hits, it is going to change the face of sickle cell the way we see it. Because with the names we have attached, and when we're able to market this and promote this on all the major talk shows, it's going to be a game changer. And then we intend to continue that with other conditions such as HIV. So I was in talks with Gilead to do an HIV version of the show, which I think would be unbelievable. So to take 5 people living with HIV and bring in awesome experts and deal with, once again, the mental, physical, emotional sides of the condition, and be able to help change some lives, maybe have someone who was recently diagnosed, and then also people who are living with it, whether it's a couple with diabetes that needs to deal with this. Gotta say hi to I gotta drop some names. I want them to hear this. Karen Vieira, PhD. She's helping me with some great connections. Dr. Tamia Austin, Shirley Howe Miller, Stephanie Yao at GBT, a ton of great people. Wendell and Whitney, once again at GBT, or Dr. Wilmer Hunt Watts, a great support who's always supported what we do. And I got to say this because you know what? These are the ones who are actually on the front lines and are helping me connect with the right people in these industries so that we can get where we can. Because, you know, as an advocate, I can only do so much without support. And, you know, this is much bigger than me. And I believe that we can change and help the community of other advocates if we have a show like this that could really be that touchdown for some of the people who are living with these conditions. So
Charles,
that's my plugs.
Yeah. So your modus operandi is to follow multiple people, like 5, right, with the same disease. And I think that's brilliant. We've been talking about bringing on small groups of people with painful disease, and also small groups of people with addiction disease, because it's really the fear of addiction that's driving this horrible mess that we have of just, you know, people lie awake at night waiting for their appointment with their doctor 30 days hence, waiting for the next shoe to drop. You know, it's terrorism. It's really just plain old-fashioned terrorism. So we have started on our show interviewing people with addiction disease to kind of put a face, close the distance, you know, as Martin Luther King said, so that people, you know, begin to look into the lives of other people and try to understand better what's going on. But I love your idea of having more than one person. There's a lot of one-person stories, which are fine, like the one on TV tonight. But when you've got 4 or 5 people, you know, then you get a much, much broader, much more humanistic view of the interaction of people on this planet with these terrible diseases. So I do applaud you for that. I think that's a wonderful, a great idea.
We have a call coming in, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay. Caller from area code 843. Welcome to the Doctor's Corner. What's your name and what's your question?
Hi, this is Tammy from South Carolina.
Hi, Tammy.
Hi, Dr. Kline and Charles.
Hey.
Just a question about sickle cell. I have a grandson that's 18 months old. His father has sickle cell. Should we have him tested? How do they test him? What's the chances of him having it?
Doc, you may want to answer that one.
No. Okay. Well, the genetics are, you got to get 2 genes. So the father can only give one of the 2 genes that he has as a sickle cell person. So if the mother is a sickle cell carrier and carrying one gene, then the baby's going to have a 50% chance of getting 2 sickle cell genes. So yes, the baby should be tested if the family wants to. There's a lot of sensitivity in the black community about white people telling black folks, hey, you got to get tested for this disease, and if you're pregnant with it, you know, then you got to get an abortion and that kind of stuff. So it's still up to each individual family what they want to do.
Okay.
But yeah, go ahead.
Now, my daughter would not be a carrier, correct? Because she is Caucasian.
Right, probably not. There's a rare possibility, but probably not.
So with that being the case, where she's Caucasian, he's African American, he has sickle cell, what are the chances, and should we still have him tested?
No, the chances are 50% the baby may be a carrier. Now that's important to know. As the baby grows up, it's important that people know they have this carrier state. And so then they need to be alert to the fact that if they have babies with another carrier, then they've got a 25% chance of having a child with full-blown sickle cell disease. But, you know, you can get all this information on the web, you know. and decide yourself.
No, but you know what? It sounds great coming from you, Doc, you know? And you know what? That is, and not to cut the young lady off, but that is part of what we're looking to do, because these conversations need to happen. And by creating these shows and these projects, we could talk about things like this, right? So I hope he answered your question. If you have any more, please ask him so we can get anything out the way that you need to get out the way.
Nope, that's everything. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
All right. Got to say what's up to Gary S. Mizo, too, as well, who's got a great product we're looking at doing some work with called Nanobiotech. It's a great thing for diabetes, too, as well. And, hopefully we're going to be coming out with my own line of product with that. And it's great for cardiovascular issues, too, as well. And it's going to be very powerful. So,
is that
all
the
right,
CBD oil?
Any more callers? Janelle.
No, we don't have any callers right now, but
I get to talk about my product. My jellies and jams are just wonderful.
Please.
You know, I love my jellies and jams. I have several flavors, and
what about donuts?
I have them in the trunk of my car, available for purchase.
Oh, you're selling them like musicians sell CDs, right?
There you go, right out of my van.
There you go, brother. And you know what? I got to tell you something. I love him. I love a person that quotes Martin Luther King, because I do the same thing on a regular basis. That says a lot about you, brother. You know.
Yeah. Well, he was quite a man. He was.
And
you know, we're looking for civil rights folks, for the old civil rights folks, to help us with this. There are chronic pain, because exactly the same thing's going on. It's just outrageous hatred and prejudice. You know, people are being accosted in pharmacies. You doper, you doctor shopper, and here they've got this horrible disease, you know, and so they've just been labeled.
Is it that bad?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, they've got these horrible diseases. Go ahead.
Did you see what they said about gabapentin now? Is that now labeled
street
as
drug?
I think that's yeah.
Terrible drug.
Now part of the
people
opioid
get a
issue.
buzz from it. Yeah, I don't know who's getting a buzz from it. It's a terrible drug. It doesn't work. We did a Twitter poll, and only worked 20% of the time, and they had horrible side effects, and it's expensive. You know, so yeah. And by the way, I was thinking, you know, of your older folks that don't watch, social media quite so much. Is how about film strips?
Yeah.
No, I was thinking I was being more serious of like a newsletter, you know, a print newsletter. Just an idea.
Everyone has gotten out of that too as well. They say print is dead.
I know, but you know, you got older populations, you know, but yeah, most everybody has at least a telephone now that they can watch things on. You know, my whole life is on my telephone. You know.
Yeah, you're right. And one thing I was actually really shocked at, and I want to look at too as well, especially entering into the sickle cell space. I've asked a few people, advocates, is there a sickle cell publication that we can run some stories in? There's no publications for sickle cell.
Little magazine, yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna create one. Hopefully, we'll get some companies behind us, and we'll create an online sickle cell, magazine, and get some information out there.
Sickle Times.
So
there you go.
Hey,
Dr. Kline, Jan Sumstein asks, Dr. Kline, you mentioned a back brace a few shows back. Can you give the name of it? Do you remember?
Okay. The latest thing that we're looking into are corsets for women. There's some corsets on Amazon. I mean, there's some for, you know, showy sexuality, but there's also some just plain old corsets, old-fashioned ones, you know, that you'd wear under your clothes and nobody would see. And they lace up. A lot of them are long and go all the way from your tailbone up to your neck. And you lace yourself into one of these things, and I'm telling you, we've had a couple of people trying them and they really look good. They're about $58.
So it gives you a small waist, big hips, and
yeah, there you
good
go.
back.
But because you can lace them, it'll fit to your body, and it's like having a new spine.
Somebody asked if they crush your internal organs. Do they do that?
No, because you can adjust it. You adjust it, and your body's not that weak. And ladies used to wear these horrible corsets, to try to get a 20-inch waist, and they seem to have survived. So I wouldn't worry about that. And plus, you can control it. You don't have to make it so tight that it's squishing your organs or you can't breathe. But this is just something new we're trying. It's just an idea that people can try. And, if you've got chronic back problems, it supports you all the way from your lumbar to your cervical spine. But you got to get a long enough. So when you're looking on the Amazon, look for a real long one. Okay. So,
Charles, what kind of back brace were you talking about?
Me? I wasn't talking.
Oh, you weren't? Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about a back brace.
No.
Got it.
No. But how much time do we have left?
We have about 14 minutes.
15, all right, go ahead. I might need to get off a little soon, is that all right? Or
yeah, that's fine.
Or do you need me for the whole time?
No. Feel free. This is an informal show.
Yeah.
And you can take off early if you want. We'll never speak to you again or support any of your shows. But not to worry.
Thank you.
Charles, also I wanted you to mention your CBD oil company.
Yeah, I have a beautiful CBD. I can't say the name just today, but we're hoping to have it in the market. I'm working with CB Diva, Tish, an amazing lady who knows her stuff inside and out, and hoping that we can really touch the pain community as well as even the diabetic community, and I've even seen CBD, helps in some of the issues with sickle cell. So we're, I would say maybe about 2 weeks away from launching the line, and of course, it's going to be something that we're going to grow. But I think that, getting it out there and being able to have the offering and then, continuing to do what I do and get it in the right hands and team up with some good partners, I think we're going to be able to make a very strong run at this. Even my mother with RPS, Tish, actually made some product for her. And, she rarely feels any relief from anything, and made her something specifically for her, and it was more of a on application, and also oral to tincture too. But she actually was getting some relief, and that was quite refreshing to know that that there's products out here that. I'm sure we could all agree, and Doc could agree, that we really need to get on the market, and it's a shame that there's so much legislation and so much confusion, and as far as being able to get these people some natural relief to some of their issues.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not only that, Charles, it's I think people feel helpless when they have these diseases and they go to the doctor and they get a prescription, and that's it, I think people like to be able to tend to one another. It's kind of a human thing that we do. And of course, you are picking up on that with your shows and stuff of helping each other. And CBD oil is a great way to do it because, one, as little as I know about it, it seems to anecdotally be quite a wonderful substance. And plus, if you're using it as a massage oil, you get human touch, which is an important therapeutic modality. So if it doesn't get taken off the market as a drug that produces highs, or a phobia of highs, I think it's going to turn out to be quite something. So, good for you. Watch out for, tainted supplies and all that, but that's just part of, good business. because apparently a lot of it is weak, it's watered down, et cetera, because it's not regulated by the FDA, I don't think. And hopefully they will, because that's the good thing about the FDA. They do look into these, try to look into the purity of products and check them out. So, yeah, good for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Charles, for coming on. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to thank you. I know you've come a long way since, I did, one of your earlier shows, and, I know you're continuing to spread the knowledge and the wealth of information to people with, conditions. And I just want to, say congratulations for, persisting and continuing to take this to the next level and leaving your legacy, as it will go on and be shared even long after we're all gone. And, I want to thank you for even thinking about me and bringing me back on and continuing to support my endeavors too as well.
Absolutely.
All right, dude, it was nice talking with you, and you can go early. We got the little early pass for you here. Pick it up at the door.
So much. Can you send me that link, Janelle?
Yeah, I sure will.
All right. Have a great one, Doc.
Okay.
And Doc, we may have to have you on this show, so we're going to stay in touch now.
Oh, I'm very expensive.
Just give them donuts. Yeah.
Oh, well. Now that we're getting closer to the deal, the price goes up.
Awesome. You guys have a great rest of the show.
All right. Thanks, Charles. Have a good night.
See you later.
All right.
Bye-bye. Dr. Kline, we didn't do our mailbag questions. Did you want to do that, or do you mind?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
All right. We just have two. Okay, the first one was I had a problem with a pharmacy telling me due to the DEA quantity restrictions, the pharmacy was running out of meds 4 to 6 days before the month was up. And they said they were making everyone wait a few days to pick up medications. I have been filling there for a little over a year and a half. I made a complaint to the pharmacy board, and they advised me they could not force a pharmacist to fill a prescription they didn't feel they should fill. And my best course of action was to find a different pharmacy, which I already had, or consult a lawyer. The month before this happened, the pharmacist tried to tell me I was early in picking up my prescription. My doctor has even tried writing so many every 5 to 6 hours for 28 days. I went to a different pharmacy and they filled it with no problem. I've been picking them up every 28 days in the past. Is this just a pharmacist not wanting to fill my prescriptions and getting rid of me this way? Sorry, so long-winded. I'm going to listen tonight. If not, I'll try to play tomorrow. Okay.
No, I think it runs deeper than that. I think the pharmacists are punishing people.
Okay.
I think they're getting their jollies by torturing people. Because people are in there anxious, in pain, and so what are they? What are people that are anxious and in pain and want drugs? What are they?
Desperate.
Oh, they're druggies. They're drug seekers. There's two people that seek drugs, one of them with opiate disease and the other with chronic pain, and they think they're the same. And in fact, out of 20 people in the pharmacy, 19 will have pain and 1 will have addiction disease. I have a patient who I mailed prescriptions by FedEx to the pharmacy manager. He wasn't there that day, and then they waited a whole week, to get them out of the FedEx bag and fill them. So these excuses about being short and everything are just punishments. The pharmacist is punishing you.
Now, is this the same thing that's going on in hospitals where they're short, or it's
a little different in hospitals? They're being manipulated by suppliers, because I talked to a hospital pharmacy at Duke Hospital, and they said it's weird because 1 month they'll have drug A for intravenous use, the next month they'll have drug B, and you can tell they're being jacked around. So it is different than that. Yes, there are quotas by the government, but pharmacies I deal with never run out, ever. So I think it's just punishment. I think it's hate, prejudice, and punishment for people who swallow opiates, the opium eaters. and you just get yourself another pharmacy. And then I think it's fair game that you tell your friends to boycott the pharmacy, including its store. You can find plenty good supplies in most big independent pharmacies that you can find in the chain pharmacies. And according to our polls, the chain pharmacies are really a much larger problem than independent pharmacies. I don't know why, it doesn't matter. That's just the facts that we glean through our polls. But the more people I talk to, the more I'm thinking that this is just plain old nastiness.
Wow. Okay.
So good for the caller, for the person who wrote the thing. It's just switching. Look for independent pharmacists. They're not all perfect. You got to find one that's supportive, and it's better, I find, to have older pharmacists who still have their ethics intact. So kind of just wander around the store and see if there's some older pharmacists. Yeah. I mean, look what this is coming to. Good Lord. Our trusted druggists, are like becoming part of the big sweep, police force, that's going to solve this problem of addiction. And of course, it isn't going to solve the problem of addiction. It never has. And they've already spent $600 billion on this, trying to control substance, and it hasn't worked. $600 billion. You know what? That's the size of the United States defense budget.
Wow. All right, we have a caller. Caller from area code 262. Welcome to the Doctor's Corner. What's your question and what's your name?
Good evening, everyone. This is Dave from Wisconsin.
Hi, Dave.
I've been diagnosed, this began about 6 months ago now, and I'm deep into COPD. And they say I have 30% of my heart functioning. And I can't lie down and breathe very well. I was just wondering if there was, I was cut off of the pain medicines 2 years ago, which of course gave me mobility, and then the mobility went to zero. And I was just wondering if there's any relationship between being untreated pain and COPD, Dr. Kline. Thank you.
Yeah, there is, because when you have untreated pain, your body is expending a lot more energy to try to deal with the pain, and then you sit around more. So then you decrease your lung function, because when do they work the best? When you're carrying groceries up the stairs, or you're, doing physical activity. That's very important for getting rid of carbon dioxide and stuff. So now, you're in so much pain, draining energy, sitting around. Absolutely, it's got a function. And yeah, as a matter of fact, if you complain to the Board of Registration in Medicine, it's always good to say things other than "I'm in pain." Say I have COPD, and it appears to me that since I was cut off, I'm sitting around more, which is not good for my COPD. And I'm in pain so much, I don't have any energy, because all my energy is going into dealing with the pain. And this was solved with a simple medicine that I will never become addicted to, because there's never been a case of anyone becoming addicted who's already on the medicine. So you've got a very good case, a medical case, to take to the, type in Wisconsin Medical Board, file a little complaint, always be polite, always mention your disease, mention the name of the doctor, of course, and then your observations. And your observations are absolutely correct. And by the way, just a thing that irritates me, you probably got an ejection fraction of 30, and then doctors tell you got 30% of your heart function. That's not true. An ejection fraction of 30 is low, but there may be a lot more heart function there than 30%. There's not a direct correlation. That should not be done. That's dishonest. Some people have ejection fractions of 10%, and then they're in trouble. 30% is not that bad. I mean, it shows you have heart disease and stuff, but don't go around thinking you have 30% of your heart left. That's awful.
Okay, and our last mailbag question. Could you weigh in on the letter from 38 United States AGs to HHS Chronic Task Force pushing back on the recommendations to reevaluate flawed CDC guidelines? And it's the...
I'm not familiar with that. What did it say? So the AGs want to do what?
I don't know. They are, okay, the ages to HHS Chronic Task Force pushing back on the recommendations to reevaluate flawed CDC guidelines. And it's on naag.org/assets.
No,
Okay.
Can't comment on because I haven't seen it.
Okay, I'll give it to you next time.
So it sounds like they're opposed to reevaluating things,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Oh, yeah, well, that's okay because, you see, that would cut down on the prosecutions, and how do people get elected? Prosecutions. How does DEA get more money? Prosecutions. How do the attorney generals in the various states get more money in their budgets? Prosecutions. So if the prosecutions go down, they probably wouldn't like that. Mm-hmm. That's kind of sad.
Yeah, no kidding. A lot of people on Facebook or YouTube are saying shop, 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 pharmacist shopping. What do you think about that? I mean, can they do that? I mean, they're already being...
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. That's your own... we live in the United States of America, which is a free market economy. It's perfectly okay to shop around and look for better pharmacies with better prices. It's always good to shop for prices. Call them up and say, how much does it cost for 150 30-milligram oxycodone? Find out. We did that recently and found out CVS was charging twice what an independent pharmacy here in Raleigh was charging. Twice. That's a big jump. Call around, see. And yeah, that's your prerogative. People shop around for cars, for clothes, for watermelons, of course. And the people are afraid they're going to end up on these PDMPs. I wouldn't worry about that. They're gonna go by the wayside, and they're already in trouble. There's been articles written that they don't measure what they claim to measure, and they're really pretty terrible. They're based on CDC information, which is only from street addicts dying, so it doesn't really apply to the general population. So yeah, look around.
So you don't have to go to one pharmacy, because I thought you did. No.
Only if you're on Medicaid.
Okay.
See, that's the problem with states running healthcare plans. Oh, you have to go to this one pharmacy because they supposedly cut a deal with them. Yeah, what kind of deal? And I ran into that with one of my patients on Medicaid, and she could only go to this one pharmacy and then got stuck with these high prices. So she went to another pharmacy and just paid out of pocket. It's kind of sad because people on Medicaid are already poor, or they wouldn't be on Medicaid. But we've got a healthcare system that's gone down the toilet. And so, people have to figure out ways to work around it, And so one of the ways is to pay cash for your prescriptions, but find a place where it's cheapest.
Okay. Well, we're going to wrap up here. Did you want to say anything else before we get going?
No. I pretty much ranted and railed, to my capacity this evening. So I'm just going to quietly sign out.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Kline, and thank you, Charles Mattocks, for joining us this evening on the Doctor's Corner. And just a reminder to tune in Sunday, April 7th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the DPP Rally Talk Show with Claudia. Also, next Tuesday, we'll be back on with the Doctor's Corner, and then next Wednesday, I will be having another show on Conspiracies Against Wellness. We're having Dr. Glenn Gittleson on. He's a dentist, and he also does some work with complex regional pain syndrome. I want to say a big thank you to our audience for taking some time out of your evening to join us here at the Doctor's Corner. I'm Janelle Ogwe with Dr. Kline, signing off until next Tuesday. Have a good evening, Con Nation.
This has been The Doctor's Corner with Dr. Kline and Janelle Elgaway. Copyright 2018. All rights reserved.